Njoroge Muchiri is Johnson Sakaja's running mate for the Nairobi gubernatorial race. He's with us in the studio. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Happy to be here today.
It's good to have you. This is the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation. And now that you've occupied the seat, just make yourself comfortable, sit back,
Yes.
hold tight, have some water.
Thank you.
As we continue, we'll soon be cruising at an altitude of 45,000 feet above sea level, and we're not coming down until August 9th.
Yes, indeed.
You know, we've hosted Johnson Sakaja here, the senator, a number of times. We've talked about Nairobi as senator for Nairobi, what he's been doing in Nairobi, as candidate for Nairobi, as aspirant rather for Nairobi, what his dreams were for Nairobi. And then we saw in the media that here Johnson Sakaja has picked Njoroge Muchiri as his running mate. So people were like, who? Njoroge Muchiri. Yeah, I've heard the
very
name.
good.
Who is that? Njoroge Muchiri. He had first wanted to vie as governor in another county. Then now, so please, give us a good account of yourself. Introduce yourself, Mr. Njoroge Muchiri.
For example, wondered, was there not an MP some years ago called Muchiri?
Yes.
Is he the relative of that Muchiri?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
No, that's not my relative. But anyway, I'll tell you who I am.
Yes.
Like you said, my name is Njoroge Muchiri, and I've been in the corporate world. I've been in the corporate space for quite a while. I left banking as the chief operating officer of Absa Bank. Ultimately in the last 4 months or so. I've been working in the banking sector here in Kenya. I've worked as the managing director of NIC Bank in Tanzania. I've worked as director of Standard Chartered Bank in Botswana. I've worked in project management work in many parts of the world, working for Standard Chartered in Europe, in the Far East, in Tanzania, and in the Far East in Brunei. So my background and experience is in corporate banking, which is what I've been doing. So a lot of governance work, a lot of change work, a lot of transformation work, a lot of ensuring that systems and processes work, but also as a business lead in one of my roles within the Barclays Bank, which was the precursor of Absa. I was head of sales in the process of managing what we call customer network, which is basically the branch network, managing the business processes, managing the sales, managing the business acquisition, managing performance, and ensuring that the bank basically delivers, the branches deliver for the whole business. So I've been doing that for quite a while until the back to get into politics came along, and I left Absa and went and ran for the governor, for the nominations of the governor in a different county. That didn't get the results that I was hoping for, and I was able to pivot back to the city.
What drove you into politics?
I think the focus on politics is about service, and if you don't have a heart for service, it's very difficult to get into politics, because politics has got challenges that are unusual, that are different, that are difficult, and you have to always ensure that you understand acutely the needs of the people. So for the longest of time, ever since I started working, I've always gotten myself involved in community work, community service, community involvement in this, the place where I grew up in my early years, and I felt that is a very satisfying way of actually giving back to society. And when you grow in the corporate world, you may lose touch with what actually happens to the common man every day. But I found a way of connecting with that, and I was able to do that. So I've been helping kids go to school. I've been helping people who approach me for various reasons, and I felt that I should transition to full-time politics. Actually, I had this interest from when I was 27, but as circumstances would be, I didn't get quite to get in there then, and I think this is the right time for it. Yeah.
So, I mean, you said that you then tried your hand, gubernatorial nominations, that did not work. So when then approached to be the running mate for the current Nairobi senator, what did you think about that?
I think it's
Why do you think, let me rephrase the
Okay,
question.
sorry.
Why do you think you then were selected for that position?
I think the first and foremost is that the requirements for the management and running of the city required the kind of profile that I probably bring onto the ticket. I've had a long career in corporate governance, like I said, in management of complex change programs, in management of situations that require transition from one set to another. When you look at the experience that I've brought onto the board on board, you can see it supplements very well the experience of the senator, now the incoming governor, Johnson Sakaja. He's a very experienced politician from a very young age. Leadership, leading even a party to taking power in the country at a very young age. This is a gentleman with very, very strong leadership credentials. And I, on the other hand, have been in the corporate world management that I have consistently developed and grown, not just within Kenya, but also in other parts of the world. So when you put two together, you give Nairobi a combination of people who can deliver, people who can actually provide the services that they need, and people who have a vision and a need to ensure that Nairobi changes. It becomes the kind of city that you want to be proud of, the city that you want to live in, the city you want to say, I am from Nairobi. And that's what I believe I brought onto the ticket.
Okay. So, I mean, finance heavy, corporate banking heavy, that's what your background is.
Yeah.
And then you also, of course, talk about change management and governance, right?
Yes.
On the other hand, Johnson Sakaja has been saying, make Nairobi work, then alluding to that it doesn't work at the moment and that things are in a shambles. So, is this now the ticket upon which then, with your experience, with his experience, we're saying now, overhaul the operations of Nairobi, which essentially is the heartbeat of the nation?
Yes, indeed. We have set ourselves very ambitious targets to ensure that Nairobians feel that the new government that we put in place delivers for them. When you don't have enough water in your house, Nairobi is not working. When you're stuck in traffic, Nairobi is not working. When you go to a hospital and find there's no medicine, or there's no doctor, or there's no anesthetist, or whoever it is, Nairobi is not working. And when you find that you have to get your child up at 4 a.m. so that they can go to school, Nairobi is not working. That's the one side of it. The other side of it, we have a lot of people, young people, Nairobians who've grown up in the city and they can't find work because there's just not enough investment that creates opportunities for these young people to find work and to generate a livelihood for themselves. So when we look at those two, we believe that we can change the fate and the circumstances under which people in Nairobi live. Yeah, when you find people living in the informal settlements, and you find somebody has to jump over a garbage dump, go around a corner that is dark, and then finally get into a house that has got a trench, a waste trench that is in their house. Nairobi doesn't work.
Okay.
So we need to deal with that, and that is what we are promised to do.
There's a very clear demarcation between what can be referred to as the public and the private sector.
Yeah.
But at the heart of it, the real difference is in one of ownership. Who owns it? The public sector ostensibly is supposed to be owned by the public.
Yes.
Private sector, it's clear. They are owners. It's a business. And the decision-making process is structured, clearly understood. But we have a problem where the public sector in this country, in our counties, and Nairobi is not excluded from that list, where the so-called public sector is actually privately owned. I say it's privately owned because the people who run it, forget the governor, forget the structure of government that he has, the actual process that generates an income and gets the city moving, as you say, there are people whom we refer to loosely in this country as cartels, who actually run this particular city. Now, we've had people coming here wanting to be governors telling us how it is they want to run the country. So essentially you're telling us you want to take the running of the country away from the cartels. How exactly do you plan to do it?
Yeah, that's an important point you make, and we've had a lot of that about the real governance process being taken away from those people who should be running it and being migrated to vested interests, which is basically this group of people that are defined as cartels. I personally think that the reason why these people have thrived is because there's not enough political goodwill from the leadership of the county, from the leadership in the various cadres within the county government to be able to deal with their interests. And I personally think that we can review how service is driven, because when you find a broken service delivery chain, then you find opportunity for intermediation in all forms, including corruption, and including involvement of these people who are called cartels. So one of the ways to deal with this is to make sure that our service delivery activity is actually improved, automated, made more efficient, so that a service user or somebody who needs a service from the county government does not actually need to look for somebody to intervene to help them move ahead. That's the one bit. The second bit is to make it extremely difficult for people to break and compromise the processes that we put in place. And that is what we think we'll be able to do with the automation that we want to do in terms of things like, for example, the licensing. We need to look at things like garbage collection, which is a lot of these vested interests. And in those, we are already thinking about how to do PPPs, public-private partnerships, in management of the environment, because a lot of what happens in there is something that leaves a lot to be desired, and we need to be able to improve that. We need to be able to ensure that the people who process this garbage collection and whatever is taken, there are people who understand that it is a revenue stream that can help us make money within the county, but also give employment to our young people. So we don't leave this to a few individuals to manage and decide how it's going to happen. So we will break those. We will, if we find that there are people who have entrenched interests, we will make sure that the processes that are supposed to be put in place work. And if they work, then there'll be not enough rules for these guys who want to be.
But I'm going to walk us through.
Yeah.
You've told us about your intentions,
Yeah.
and we've heard you clearly. But
Yeah.
practically, how do you intend to do this? You say you want to automate revenue collection. How do you plan to do this? You plan to create structures and frameworks within which the people whom we refer to and the grouping that we refer to as cartels will not find breathing space. How exactly do you plan to do this?
Let's take, for example, I just use an example of garbage collection. Garbage collection is a very, shall I say, considered lucrative in the process, in the management of the city affairs. And one of the things we are looking at is dividing up the city into a number of sections. We're calling them boroughs. And when we do that, we create management structures that are closer to the people, that will help us provide services to people, let's say, living in Southlands, in the northern part of the city, the western side of the city, and all that. And within that, we create people who will be well remunerated, because the county government collects enough revenue, and we make it efficient. We even collect more, and we make those people responsible for specific actions within their areas. So I have a team that looks at garbage collection in Nairobi South, for example. That team would be fully answerable to what happens in that process. Right now, we have a centralized management of waste, for example, so that you find, you collect garbage in Kawangware, you drive it all the way to Dandora and such other places. So we need to bring this closer to the people. And we also need to make sure that the people who work in these systems are actually well remunerated, because part of the problem that we get is that when somebody doesn't get sufficiently empowered, whether it's the tools they need or it's a sufficient compensation, then you find they always invariably have to look for something else to do to keep themselves going. And this is what we need to take out of. So when you look at to get out of, sorry. So when you look at how do we intend to manage this, we are going to look at examples. There are other parts of the world. I've seen other parts of the world that I've lived in where garbage collection is actually an exciting job. You see the guy who does garbage collection enjoys it. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen them. You know, he drives his truck up, he comes, he's happy to pick the beans, he's happy to come out and put them up. We can do that in the city. When we do that, there is no place for intermediation. And I think the people we'll employ doing that will also be happy because they'll be making a revenue out of it. And if we can process this and recycle what we can recycle, we'll actually be able to kill that chain. I think it takes effort. I think it takes commitment. And I know it is not an easy thing, like you say, but it's something that we are determined to do.
Privatization of garbage collection, or let's say solid waste management, is not new. I mean, Nairobi has been experimenting with this in various ways, licensing various companies that have the oldest lorries on the road, and they're just strewing garbage all over. So what new will you do? I mean, what fresh idea will you inject into privatized waste management?
I think, and you're right. I've seen all those trucks. I've always wondered how come the trucks that collect garbage are the oldest you can find, and it's probably because the rules and maybe the regulations around it don't require that we have structures that work properly. So we intend to actually look for proper investment, because I think the garbage collection is managed by people who have not sufficiently invested in this process, because it's essentially a cash cow. You know, you collect garbage, you take it to Dandora, you're supposed to have it weighed. I'm not sure it's weighed because I don't think they even think there are scales. So it's just a guy looking at it and saying, yeah, that's 10 tons. So he fills it up and gives you a form and you go and collect your pay. So we need to make sure that process is properly controlled. That's why I'm saying we must have proper tools, we must have proper trained people, we must have proper automation to be able to get this done. We will be able to do it. I think a lot of these things fail on the back of lack of political will, lack of support, lack of commitment by the leadership to ensure that the processes work.
You know what the cartels have always done?
Yeah.
They've always used the youth
as
one of the things that that they'll push back on the county government with. So number one, when you say, don't bring in these old trucks, they tell you, I mean, garbage collection ni kazi ya vijana in Nairobi. So if you now start saying we bring in a 40 million shilling truck, you're basically knocking out the youth and the hustlers, and you're in Kenya Kwanza, from government and from business, and you're now making this an elitist business. How will you address that? Because the moment you touch it, be sure that the next thing is you're going to have youth demonstrating in this city saying, Kina Njoroge and Sakaja are taking away business from us.
Actually, we will not get away with the youth. Contrary to that, we will actually give them a lot more work to do. They are the guys who will actually be collecting this. We don't have to take out the youth from whatever they do. Even today, when you go to a place like Dandora, we went to Dandora the other day for a church service, and you see those roads. The garbage on those roads has not been collected for maybe years, I don't know. The way it looks is piled up on each other. So what has been happening to the department that is supposed to deal with this? This youth, and then the youth that come out, there are so many, there is capacity for these people to work. And collecting garbage itself, that act cannot be automated, that particular act. It has to be done physically by individuals. And this is what we are going to give our youth, but we'll give them the tools to be able to do it in a decent manner so that we can have dignity in the process. The people who live in those dumps, if you look at them, they don't live a dignified life, but they are in there looking for whatever treasures they can find because they need to live. We need to give them a way of working that is fulfilling to them, and it's also fulfilling to the people who need a clean environment, which is basically everybody in the city.
Several things that we'll continue with this conversation after this break. Njoroge Muchiri, there we'll talk about water and sanitation. We'll talk about, like you're saying, business. Nairobi is not an agricultural county. It is a business county. How do you create those opportunities for business to thrive? Looking at what you've been talking about, school feeding program and others, and how to address the less fortunate or people who are living in informal settlements in the city. All these coming up after this break. Njoroge Muchiri is Johnson Sakaja's running mate for the Nairobi gubernatorial race. They are it's UDA, right? Both of you are in UDA?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Both of you are in UDA, and this is the Kenya Kwanza coalition, looking at what it is that they hope to do if they are given the seat of Nairobi to run? And what do they understand to be the problems of Nairobi?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Our guest this morning is Njoroge Muchiri. He's Johnson Sakaja's running mate for the Nairobi gubernatorial race under the UDA Kenya Kwanza ticket. Njoroge, when we listen to your campaign, and of course the national Kenya Kwanza UDA campaign is talking about bottom-up. Now, Nairobi is a business hub for the country. If we look at the previous two gubernatorial elections and campaigns, what we've seen people doing is looking for job opportunities for our youth. And what they do is they come up with car wash businesses along the road. They come up with some small market and talking about, mwananchi mdogo wa kawaida to get places to sell. But those are not even sustainable because those car washes, they don't last. Now, when you hear this bottom-up story of yours, people think the same thing. What is it that you want to do to increase the opportunities for trade in Nairobi, number one, and number two, to make those that are there thrive?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to understand and appreciate is that in our bottom-up economic model, we're talking about helping those people with businesses or small businesses to actually grow them. We want to decriminalize enterprise because for the longest of time, and you know this, people in the city have been ran after by the city askaris when they try to do just a small bit of business, which is basically trying putting food on the table for their families. We want our people to understand that they should be partners. They should be enablers, not people who strive for business. And we want them to be able to understand that these people who are doing this kind of trade can actually do it in a peaceful and orderly manner. We want a city of order and dignity where everybody has the hope that he can progress and they have the opportunity to do so. And that is what we want to drive within Nairobi. So when you look at managing these businesses, again, we have experiences we have seen, in places like Hong Kong, in places like Malaysia. No, you find the informal businesses actually have a very good structure of how they operate, how they run, and how they work, the times they work, what they do, and how they get licensed. And we can introduce the same regime in Nairobi and be able to allow people to make a living.
Practically though.
Yeah.
Just paint for us a picture. I mean, look, use hawkers, use the Juakali artisans, use the traders in Gikomba. Paint us a picture of a new Nairobi.
I start with, for example, the traders who trade on the roads and stuff like that. We intend to build 20 new markets for them. Now, this will take out people quite a number of the people out of the streets, and they'll be able to work in decent spaces where they don't get rained on, they don't get to work in the sun and stuff like that, and where we have proper management of the services that we go in there, garbage collection, water, stuff like that. We want to do that. That will take out quite a number of those. And
20 markets.
20 new markets.
Across Nairobi?
Across Nairobi.
Capacity per market?
We'll determine based on the spaces where we are going to, but we'll be able to take out a lot of the informal traders that we see on the streets.
Have you identified these 20 areas so far?
We've already spoken to areas like Zimmerman, Kahawa West, Njiro, Wiki, all those places we have actually been looking at, and that's actually my responsibility as a deputy governor, because I'll be a deputy governor with a portfolio to manage business and to manage licensing in the city.
Will this be new markets, or will you be expanding on the markets that already exist?
New markets.
Absolutely new.
We'll do new markets. We'll look for space in new areas, and where we have where you have an existing market, expanding the market is a very complicated process. We have to manage carefully because people are afraid that when you start building in an existing market, the people who have been operating there
they'll
will
be disenfranchised.
Yes, exactly. So we have to be very careful about that. It's best even to try and manage, create new markets so that we are not disrupting people's business. Because by the time you say you're building, where will they be trading?
But what I want to ask is, when you talk about hawkers, they're able to ply their trade because they know where the clientele is going to come from.
That's correct.
How then do you guarantee that when you put up these new places, that the clientele that they had before, or there will be sufficient clientele to justify the existence or the moving of their businesses to these new premises?
I think the challenge that we have with all this is the access. Because the reasons why people come onto the roads is because our people go through certain routes, and therefore that's why you want to go and trap them and make the business. If you create a market where there is sufficient parking space, there is sufficient transport, people will be able to actually move to those markets. You find even the private supermarkets. You find some private supermarkets that provide people transport to be able to go to the market and get back. Yeah, even today in Nairobi, there are people who do that. So it's doable when you create a catchment area, and you must think of, or we must think of, how do you get customers to these people. That's the one side when you have formal markets. I said earlier, where you have the informal trade, where you have the hawkers, you're going to trade between, say, 3 and 6 in a certain location. So that could be Moi Avenue, that could be Kenyatta Avenue, whichever street we choose to actually do that. There, the traffic from the offices, people who are going to the public transport termini, they'll be able to pass through, pick their stuff, and go. So it will be a two-pronged approach to ensure that we get people to interact in their normal, the way we are doing lifestyle banking. When I give the example of banking, where we say you can bank on your phone, you can bank from your house, you can bank from the same thinking, that you must provide me services where I need them. You must provide me, you must meet me at my point of passion, where I have a need, and that is the point where I need to be able to get the service that you're offering. And that is what we want to do. So the design of the city should be based on what people need, not what we think.
Not what you think
Yes,
that people
not
will
what we
need.
think. Yes,
You
that's what
know,
we're doing.
when I'm hearing
Yeah.
you speak, Njoroge, I'm excited at the fact that there's a prospect, but at the same time, I'm getting very many question marks in my head because I'm not hearing a concrete plan. Now, you're a man who has run, operations of a serious multinational bank in the country. By the time you open a branch, you have mapped out everything.
Yes.
I'm asking you about these 20 markets, and I'm not hearing the mapping out. We have seen various attempts at creating and expanding markets in Nairobi. Westlands Market has taken over 10 years. It's still some structure there. And one of the things about that structure is those things that you're talking about: access, the road that leads to these markets, the parking around this market, even for goods trucks that are bringing in goods and wares into this market. Completely shambolic. I'll give you another example. Your home county, the one where you wanted to be a governor, and we talk about this all the time, Nyandarua. On your way to Nakuru, there's Sokomjinga. That's in Nyandarua County, isn't it?
Yes, it
The
is.
county government came up with a market a few meters from Sokomjinga. It took forever for traders to move there. Why? Market was built. It did not really factor in that these traders are not hawkers. They are mini to large scale wholesale traders. So not enough space, not enough parking space for vehicles. So if we talk about 20 new markets, and I'm not hearing that story of this is how the markets would operate, this is how the markets would then bring in the footfall to the people, you'll have white elephants.
I think you make a good point, but talking about the markets and the Westlands market in particular, actually, I should say that unlocking of the blockage you had with the Westlands market was done by Honorable Johnson Sakaja in terms of ensuring the market is completed and that people have moved into that space. We were there the other day with him, and we found that part of the basement is still not complete. So this is a piece of work that will ensure we give priority to complete and ensure that people can actually come and park. Because if you can come and park in the basement, then you can go up and do your shopping and go back into your car and move off. So the challenge is that the piece of work was done, but it wasn't completed. But when it's completed, I assure you the market will work. It will function properly. When we look at other places to work, and we've gone to other places, like, for example, there is a market that has been done at Dagoretti in Gando. And it's sort of several floors. And, of course, people say, if I'm on third floor or whatever floor, how will people ever know that I'm in there? So we need to look at different designs of how do you ensure that people can walk into those markets or can get into those markets to be able to do their shopping. If you make it an attractive space, people will go. That is why people go to multi-level shopping malls in the Western world, and they actually go and they're able to do their shopping. So this is the same thing that we want to create. So our markets, we want to do them in a different way to be able to attract people who feel this is a good space to be in, this is a good space to go to, this is a good space to go and buy your wares. So the process of designing and implementing that is going to be done when we're in government. This is a policy statement we have made that we are going to have 20 new, because we believe that there is need for that from the data that we see in terms of the number of people we have.
Not very far from that Westlands Market.
Yeah.
We have Sarit.
Yes.
That Westlands Market existed even before Sarit was ever conceived.
Sure.
Look at the metamorphosis Sarit has undergone. Now, the reason why it keeps attracting people is just that convenience, the one simple thing. You are able to find parking.
Correct.
You're guaranteed. Now, when we talk about then a project that is still incomplete and the basement, which is supposed to be the parking, is incomplete, that already creates a problem in one's mind. We know how congested Westlands can be. The moment you cannot park, then even the idea, the attraction, if anything, the project repels you. You suddenly feel this is not a place I would actually like to go to. I look at a simple market like Kenyatta Market, okay? Kenyatta Market thrives because it has parking. Uncomplicated. It's known for its nyama choma and whatever else it actually offers. Now, I am saying that when we talk about the things that will ensure that that business actually does what it's supposed to achieve, you are falling into the trap and the category of politician who tells us things that we've heard before.
No, we are not. I don't think we are falling that. We are saying we will unlock that problem. The problem of the market in Westlands.
But they all
specifically, yeah.
Everybody says they're going to unlock it. Yeah. They just tell us how different they're going to be.
Yeah.
Mr. Njoroge, the point I'm making is this. Your intentions are clear and they sound good. What guarantee do we have that it will actually bear the fruits you say it will bear?
I think the guarantee can come only from the credibility of the leadership that we are putting in place. Because we have Johnson Sakaja as the governor. He's never been the governor of the city. And Njoroge Muchiri as his deputy. I've never been the deputy governor in the city. We are assuring you that our approach to service delivery, our approach to solutioning for the problems of the people of Nairobi is going to be different, because that is really why we come into this. So when you look at that space, and you've given a good example of Sarit Center, they've been reorganizing and rearranging and making sure that people can access the shopping mall and be able to do their things. It's the same thing that you'd want to do with a government investment. Personally, I'm not sure how they decided to set it up and do it that way and leave the basement incomplete before they got to open it up. But I think it's a symbol and a sign of the kind of political goodwill I was talking about. And once we are able to say that I want the governor of the city to be able to go and shop in the Westlands Market, just like he can shop in Sarit Center, then I must do the standards. I must give it the standards that are commensurate with that, because it's not an issue of funds. We have sufficient funds that we collect in the city. We should be able to do the market well. And that also gives us the ideas about how to design the future markets that we are going to design. And when we get feedback, like I've just mentioned, of the market in Gando, right? So we know what has been done in the past is not what to be done. So we know we have to get away from those models, and that's why we have to use designers and people we work with that can create spaces that we are happy to go to, that we are happy to actually get to, because it can be done. I don't see why a government or a county government infrastructure or hospital, whatever it is, should be of a lower quality than that one that is set up by a private investor. Yeah.
One question that comes to mind, I mean, looking at the institution of the NMS in Nairobi a couple of years ago, right? And then we've been able to see some things that they have done. I mean, it was like a new messiah when some folks in South B, South C opened their taps after 20 years and water came flowing out, right? There is looking at 24 new hospitals built in the city, right? Certain things having happened over time, and they seem to be getting something right. So I think the question comes in then, that for anybody who's coming in, is that there will be a collaboration with the NMS? Will it be chucked out completely? How will the two then work together? Where it would appear that the NMS has been able to sort out things that were the bane of the existence of Nairobi for 20, 25 years.
I think the NMS has had mixed successes, if you ask me. Of course, they've been able to do certain things like the hospitals you quote, like the boreholes that they've dug up, the cabros that we've seen being installed. But we must interrogate that success beyond the point of a hospital structure has been put in place. How many people have been treated in those places? Do they have medicine? Do they have health workers? Do they actually have a running system? That's the first bit to address. And I think the answer to that is that it's not as successful as we have had.
The jury is still out.
The jury is still out on that. The second one is about the functions of NMS. The functions of NMS, or the entity called NMS, came up as a result of failure of the regular county management structures.
Right.
So we are saying, and the legal setup for this actually expires with the election and stuff. So we believe that we should be able to put in place mechanisms and systems to run these functions from the normal mainstream county government, and therefore we intend to dial down the existence of the NMS.
If I can jump on that, I think a lot of times when we hear, just about the different promises that would-be future leaders tell us about what they're going to do, there is the temptation to look at the breadth of the problem and then promise that everything will be sorted out. I think there's merit in saying that there's a lot to do and that it will be a difficult job to do, and that there will be certain things that we will focus on to at least get the ball rolling. Number one, are you in agreement with that? And number two, is it possible to say that there will be three things that we will at least start work on? Because unfortunately, what you get is that people hold you to account on everything, and that whether or not if you promised it that we're going to make Nairobi work, people are going to hold you to account on everything about Nairobi that doesn't work today. Is there merit in saying, look, folks, we understand that there's a total mess here and that we're going to pick three things that we are going to focus on? Or are we falling into the trap of overpromising because we want to be the one in the seat?
No, I don't think we will overpromise, and I agree with you. We can't boil the ocean, but we can take bit-sized chunks and actually sort it out. And this is what we want to do. And we identify and we can see the scope of the problems that we have to solve. And then we look at the things that we need to start with and start with those and start delivering things that are feasible. For example, there's one promise that the governor has been making, like from day one, for all the 209 public schools.
The senator
in Nairobi. He's a governor. He's going to be the governor in a few short months. So we're going to have a school feeding program for all the children in those public schools.
Public primary
schools.
Not only ECD.
Not only ECD.
Okay.
We know that the schools belong to the national government because that part is national government, but he's undertaken and because of the things you see that helps the children actually be able to learn, become better learners, that we're going to have a feeding program. It's been started off in one of the constituencies by one of the MPs, KJ, and it's something that we can actually develop and drive that. So that's going to happen. The second thing is, because we said we want to create a city of order and dignity. We want to get away from people living like subhumans in a lot of these settlements. So the cleaning up of the city, we must work on that. We must make sure that it moves on. We must address the health needs of our people to make sure that you can go to a hospital and get medication at the time you want it, when you want it, and when you need it, rather, and be able to actually feel that the county government hospitals are meeting your needs. So we will be able to drive that. We know the problems are many. We know the challenges are many. But the driving thing is the mood and the tone set at the top. The tone at the top is going to be set by the governor.
Tell me, though, why the school feeding program? Why is that a priority for Johnson Sakaja and Muchiri?
We think is a priority because you see, education has been a big contributor to people being able to take their families out of need in a lot of the cases, and for these children who live in the city, the level of poverty and the amount of need that they have is actually probably more than the pangs that you find of poverty in the rural counties. And therefore, when you for a family, when you feed their child, you give them lunch. Even the mother or the father, when they go to work or whatever they go to do, they know that their child will be fine. And when you do that, you actually affect the household budget and allow them to do other things with that particular income that they're using for that.
Challenge, though.
Yeah.
That when you talk about this, the target, as I hear, is looking at those who from low-cost neighborhoods, right? Or let's call
Primarily.
it the slums of Nairobi. We don't have many public schools in these areas. If we talk about Mukuru, for example, Mukuru alone has over 1 million people living in Mukuru. How many public primary schools do we have in Mukuru kwa Ruben, Mukuru kwa Jenga, Mukuru Kayaba?
Actually, we are not targeting only those schools. We are saying that 209 of them, all of them.
Public
Schools, 209. Yes, so we are
So
not...
I'm saying there's 1.5 million people who live in this space called Mukuru 1 to 3, but they don't have access to public schools. Most of their schooling is actually being done by private institutions. So they are not going to benefit.
I think in terms of the access to schooling, probably part of the reason that we need to address is why are they not able to access the public schools, and if there is opportunity for us to create learning spaces for them, because of course the informal settlements, land is a big issue. Either it's ownership or it's availability or it's access. So we need to look at how do we reach those children in those areas and be able to support them. And I think there's nothing wrong with us deciding that if it is a school that is a private school that is in a neighborhood that has need, we can think of including it in the program. That is something that we'll make decisions about when the time comes.
Well, Johnson Sakaja understands Nairobi. He's been the senator for Nairobi for
Yes,
5 years. If he hasn't said public and some private schools, then he does not have some private schools in mind. And that's what I'm asking.
I think the thing is, like I said earlier, you start solving a problem from one end. You can't take on the whole challenge and probably start including every school, because then you introduce, if you can go to private schools in the slums, why can't you go to private schools that are also in the well-off neighborhoods and stuff like that? So there has to be a criteria, and the criteria that you start with. So you start with that and then you grow it. I think when you do the private, the public schools, you have covered a huge percentage of the children in schools in Nairobi. And as we grow our revenues, as we grow our capacity, we'll probably be able to extend that in the right way.
But Njoroge, thank you very much for joining us today. In the next 30 seconds, if you're to speak to your voters in Nairobi, what is the one thing that you want to tell them?
I think the one thing I'll tell the voters in Nairobi is that they should trust Johnson Sakaja and myself to lead the city for the next 5 years, because we want to make the city a city of order and dignity, a city that has opportunities for all, and a city where you are proud to call yourself a Nairobian, a city where when you wake up every day, the city looks out for your welfare. The city actually ensures that you live in a decent space and that human dignity is restored to every single individual that lives in the city.
All right. Asante sana.
Thank you.
Mr. Njoroge Muchiri is a man who is running on the ticket with Johnson Sakaja, wants to be the next deputy governor of Nairobi City County. We've been having a conversation with him, seeking to understand their understanding of the problems of Nairobi and what Nairobi then needs going forward. He's been explaining that to us. The ticket, Johnson Sakaja and Njoroge Muchiri on UDA, okay. We've also had the competitors here as well, and we'll keep inviting more of them, because we need to understand everybody who is seeking your vote, what exactly do they want?